Hey, welcome to Midtown Tech Team. The purpose of this video is to give you the full rundown of the audio setup as it exists in the beginning of the year 2023. This is Ish, so let's get started. Alright, when you first arrive to the Cal Arts building, typically you'll see something similar to this where there are no chairs set up and the building is empty. If you have the opportunity, it's always greatly appreciated to help with any of the movement of the items, but typically what I like to do to get started is power up all of the sound and audio equipment. Be careful when climbing up the stairs to the sound booth. They are quite steep. Now there are four main things that need to be turned on for the audio to work properly. So the first of which, what I'm turning on here, is our sound board. It's an Allen & Heath digital board. You can see there it's a QU24. The power is a switch that's located on the back of the board. So here you can find it toward the left-hand side, and you know that it's powered on when you actually see the lights illuminate, like such. And next, there are two switches beneath the soundboard that need to be powered on as well. These are the amps that power on the speakers to the house. And finally, next we have this board next to the soundboard, which powers on all of the video devices as well as the audio needed to record our service. After you power the system on, you want to log in. The credentials are Midtown. The username is admin or administrator. The credentials should be posted on the soundboard itself. And you'll know that you've logged in when you can see all of the options available for the soundboard. It's a preference thing, but you can begin your day with sound setup by plugging the iPad located in this, typically in this bottom drawer. It's labeled audio. The iPad has connection to Spotify as well as Wi-Fi connection for audio to be played. So powering on the iPad will allow you to play music to not only test the house speakers as they have been now powered on, but also put a little pep in your step so you can get moving to set up the remaining items. So plugging that in and then connecting to Spotify, finding the playlist of your choice. We've got several playlists available by default, and then begin your music selection to confirm that audio is working. At this point, you should see a signal in the main audio signal channel. For reference, the audio is connected on the second stack, which is the second available set of channels on the main audio board. To do so, you're going to switch onto the second layer. There's a button labeled Layers. Now, once you've got that going, there's one more thing located toward the back of the sound booth that you want to take down with you as you begin your setup. Now, that's the extendable hook. This is for this. The purpose of this hook is to use to pull down the main Ethernet cable that acts as the snake that connects the soundboard from the back to the audio in the front. Again, this is available for you to extend higher or lower. Now, typically, it's bundled up near in the back of the room, near the actual screen, projector screen that's available. Alright, so one thing to note is all of the equipment needed for a typical Sunday service is located underneath this sound tower, the media tower here. So finding a creative way to prop open the sheets, the cloth material that's typically... So finding a way to prop open the cloth material. So once you've opened this up, you can see that it may be actually, the sound equipment may be actually blocked by the remaining items that include the welcome team and the setup teardown team as well. All of that gets packed underneath this soundboard. All of that gets packed underneath this tower, this media tower. So you may need to move some of those items out. Please note that there are teams dedicated to help with the setup of the welcome. So this is the coffee station and all of the welcome materials. And in addition to that, we've got some extra items that are specifically for the setup and teardown team, as I mentioned. But you may need to move some of those items out of the way in order to have all your items accessible. And once you have access to the rest of the sound equipment, moving this very heavy box out of the way, this would be some equipment for the setup and teardown teams. So pushing this out of the way gives you access to the rest of the sound materials. You say hello to the friends, worship leader for the days that you're doing sound, and if you're lucky, you will get some assistance with some of the setup. So the things that are on wheels essentially are the subwoofer, which is located on a dolly that's available, and in addition, we have a cart that contains all of the cabling, which includes all of the XLR cables and power cables. Now, underneath the top portion of this, you're going to find all of the microphone stands, the music stands, and the instrument stands. So guitar stands, piano stand, etc. So if piano is set up for the day and the piano player is not using their personal piano, you can find our church piano located underneath here. So you want to make sure that you grab the seat, the stand, and the piano itself, that it contains all the cables connected. Also, you will find the carpet that is used for our worship set. Once you have all those things moved to the front, then begins the setup process. Now, it's a good idea to take a look at Planning Center so you know how many musicians are scheduled and what instruments are being used during the worship set for the week. So that way you can anticipate how many music stands you would need, how many microphones and microphone stands, as well as the different instruments that will be set up. All right, so by this time you've moved all of the necessary equipment to the front to begin the setup part. Now, the first thing I like to do is center the carpet to align with the screen. Now, you may find it useful to actually pull down the screen with the hook in order to perfectly align the screen centered. The subwoofer will not be seen during the worship set. It will be behind the pipe and drape, and so it's always a good idea to push it as far back as you can to the wall. There may be some of the ballet stands there preventing you from moving it all the way back. In addition, you can get the access to the surge protector in the back to be able to power on the necessary equipment. All right, now this is the snake box here that you will use to connect all of the instrument and microphone cables. And so, like I mentioned, to do so, you're going to want to unravel or pull down the snake cable, which is an Ethernet cable that's hanging from the top and bundled. And you want to connect it in the back. There is a white colored input that's labeled D snake. Now, once you have that connected, that should pull all the necessary audio from the soundboard to the front and vice versa. You're going to want to power the snake box as well, so pull in a power cable to get the power going there. Add that to the surge protector and plug it in to get instant access. You'll know that it's powered on when you see the lights illuminate. Now typically from the sound booth perspective, looking toward the worship team, it's always a good idea to cable from left to right, and so you know how to control your channels accordingly. So in this particular instance, we have a guitar, a keyboard, and a box drum for this worship set. So in this case, we are using 3 direct boxes which connect the XLR cable to the instrument 1/4-inch cable. The reason we have 3 total is this particular keyboard uses a left-right pan action, so it's a stereo cable, so it's going to use 2 direct boxes. That may or may not be a typical setup, but it's something to know nonetheless. And like I mentioned, you want to go from left to right with your instrument and microphone configuration. In addition, we have all 3 worship leaders providing vocals. So in this case, we'll have vocals from the leader, which is Jason on keyboard, and Danica and Nate will also be providing vocals, so there will be 3 microphone cables. Now typically it's best practice to begin the setup with microphones first, meaning that would occupy channels 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And then you can coordinate the instruments from left to right. So in this case, the setup is guitar, keyboard, and box drum. And that gives us the opportunity to be able to mix and know exactly where the mix is located from your signal chain. Now we have microphone stands that have boom actions for all of the instrumentalists that are singing, as well as a straight stand available for the wireless handheld mics. So we are going to assign the Shure SM57, which is the instrument-specific mic that will be assigned to the box drum. The rest of the microphones that will be utilized for vocals will be assigned to the Shure SM58 microphones, and you'll see that we have actually 4 of those versus the 1 SM57 that's assigned to the instrument. So pulling down the screen is not necessary if you're not doing media, but always appreciated by the media team, and it also helps you align your structure for the worship set. So you as the audio engineer, your job will be to engineer the entire layout of the audio. That includes what works for a design perspective, from a sound gathering perspective, as well as the optimal sound itself in a mix that gives you the options to configure the board properly. One thing to note is with the crates that exist on the top of the cart, you will find the difference between the power cables that exist on one side, that's located in the black crate, versus the green crate, which contains all of the audio cables. XLR being the microphone cables, and the 1/4-inch cables that are the instrument cables. Now you'll notice that there are various lengths of cables, and it's always best practice to find the appropriate length for the type of connection that will be assigned to the cable. So in this case, I'm getting a longer length for a microphone cable because the run of the cable will actually be further forward than it would be to run it to the direct box or an instrument that's closer to the snake itself. It was good to practice great cable management with assigning the cables and also making sure that there are no jumbled or bundled cables in the front that can be rolled toward the back. Now, once you have all of your instrument and microphones connected on the input side, which is the left-hand side, you are going to connect two connections on the right-hand side of the snake box, which is the output side, and that is to the sub and also to the wedge monitor that the musicians will use to hear themselves with the audio pointed backwards. So one thing to note is you will choose the selection input on the back side of the sub itself, and you will connect the sub to the 7 or 8 channel. Now the monitor will get connected into mix 1 or 5, depending on the level of instruments that are inputted into the selection. You can choose either of those options. I like to use 1, but it's really your preference. So one thing to note is on those additional output selections, you will have control of those independently. So you can control the level of sound that comes from the sub, and then also control the level of sound that comes from the monitor as well. Alright, one thing to note is that your microphones may be on the sound and audio cart, or they may be located in one of the drawers at the top underneath the soundboard itself. So you may have to look in 2 different locations, but those are typically where they are located for the microphones for singers. Alright, so once everything is connected, now begins the process of mixing sound and ensuring the sound check goes smoothly. And so let's go over that process just a bit. Alright, we're going to begin by turning our music off, pressing pause on Spotify, and then switching the layer to the initial layer. And you can see that this will be represented by 7 channels today: vocal, 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 instrument, 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 instrument. So we have from channels 1 to 3 will be vocals, and then from 4 to 7 will be instruments. So you can toggle between the 2 layers that will give you the access to the additional channels that the board supports. And in this case, I'm on layer 1, and I am choosing to mix in all of the monitor activity. This is the master. This is mix 1 is the monitor. Mix 910 is the headphone. 7/8 sub. First, let's mix the monitor. So in this case, I'm selecting mix number 1 toward the right-hand side of the board. That is mixing only what comes out of the monitor wedge itself. Once you dial in that mix and the worship team is able to hear themselves well, then begins the main audio mixing, which would be for the house. So to recap, our main house is located on the LR button toward the right-hand side of this board. The monitor, which our worship team will hear, is located in mix 1. Our sub is located in channels 7/8, and our audio feed that gets sent to video is represented on 9 and 10, and which can be heard through the headphones. Some troubleshooting tips would include testing particular channels. If you're not getting a signal from one, you can isolate the channel by muting it and testing the other channels around it. If you're still not getting a signal from the channel, it's likely that the cable is bad. So you want to go back to the snake and swap the cable. If you are getting a signal, but nothing's working coming to the actual sound through, then you may actually have to pre-adjust the settings or adjust the gain accordingly. So after sound check comes the live service. So making sure that you're available for live mixing, muting channels when transitions happen from musical worship to speaker and back from speaker to musical worship. So you want to make sure you are aware of the transition space, again available through Planning Center so you have a better idea of how those transitions are happening and know how to mute and unmute each individual channel accordingly. And there you have it. The final step, of course, is the teardown and packing of all the equipment. Just remember where you grabbed the equipment from originally is the same place it will get returned. You may find it beneficial to have an extra set of hands to help carry heavy items and or packing everything nice and neat. Thanks so much for watching this video, and thanks for being a part of Midtown Vineyard's audio team.